We have been discussing Barbara Ehrenreich's Nickel and Dimed. And in this video, we're going to talk about Barbara's evaluation. We have since read about or discussed Barbara's working in Florida, Barbara's working in Maine, and Barbara's working in Minnesota. In this video, we're going to talk about the evaluation. Barbara's own comments about her experience as a low-wage worker. On page 193, Barbara notes, "No job, no matter how lowly, is truly unskilled." And I think that's absolutely the case, right? Even if you're serving, or even if you're washing or cleaning a toilet, or if you're putting clothing back on shelves at Walmart, these jobs do require a lot of energy and a lot of effort. Sure, it's not multivariate calculus. It doesn't require that kind of mental demand, but it's a lot of physical work, right? It's not like sitting in a little chair like I've been doing for the last hour or two and having a conversation with a camera. This is really difficult. You know, the jobs Barbara's doing are really difficult. Sitting in a chair, sure, I'm using my mind. My mind's a muscle that's very well developed, but I don't have to move my body much. It's not a physically demanding job. And really, this isn't even very much of an intellectual demand for somebody with my intelligence. So, you know, I could do this for 8-10 hours a day and not feel very tired at the end of my 8 or 10 hours a day. So, to me, this is easy. But anyway, I want to get through this chapter as quickly as possible. So I'll note some of the other comments that Barbara makes here. On page 195, she says, "The more they meaning corporate management, think you can do, the more they'll use and abuse you." On page 195, she notes, and all these jobs, the jobs that she worked, right, all these jobs were physically demanding, right? And I would note from that, you know, that Barbara and these other low-wage workers, they do work very diligently. They sell their bodies to these corporate elites, essentially, who then use their wage labor to go on nice Caribbean vacations for themselves, right? In 196, Barbara notes, and I quote, "In the rhetorical build-up to welfare reform that occurred, of course, in 1996 under the Republican Congress led by Newt Gingrich," but she doesn't say that. She just says, "In the rhetorical build-up to welfare reform, it was uniformly assumed that a job was a ticket out of poverty and that the only thing holding back welfare recipients was a reluctance to get out and get one." You know, Barbara basically says that's bullshit, right? Barbara admits on page 199 that yes, she did some things wrong, but that I was, and I quote, that quotes, "Something is wrong, very wrong, when a single person in good health, a person who in addition to possesses a working car, can barely support herself by the sweat of her brow. You don't need a degree in economics to see that wages are too low and rents too high." True, right? But nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about those poor people who have very little to start out with and therefore have a difficult time making it in life. On page 200, Barbara notes that in 1999, food took up only 16% of the family budget, while housing had soared to 37%. Well, I would also add from that now that Barbara's conclusion is that poverty should be calculated based on cost of rent rather than cost of food. But I would note that based on the rising food prices today in 2011, food costs are also skyrocketing in America. So maybe it's not good that the poverty line should be calculated on rent based on then on the cost of food, because food is also rising. And I think that really some of the statistics I've shown would indicate that for a family of 4 to live a good middle class life, right, you need at least $50,000 a year in income. Now that's not what the poverty line officially is, but when you have 2 children, right, you really need about $50,000 of income today. If you have a payment on your house, you're trying to save for your children's college educations, which are incredibly high based upon the fact that we now live in a society that is driven by having pristine colleges. You know, you can't have children now in college in like bunk-style dormitories because, you know, nudity is horrible. You know, can't have guys seeing one another naked. That would be horrible. Senator Santorum might get aroused, right? Or somebody like Senator Santorum might get aroused, and that we can never have that. So instead we just have really expensive college costs and, you know, really immaculate dormitories being built at universities across the country. And of course, every time a sidewalk gets a crack in it, we got to replace the sidewalk, and you got to plant all these nice trees, and the campus has to be wonderfully pristine looking. You have to have really small class sizes, even though half the classes are lecture based anyway, so the small class size isn't even that relevant. But you know, you have to make sure that all the proletarians can't obtain a college education, so they remain low-wage slave workers, right? That's how I view it, at least. Anyway, Barbara notes that while wages at the bottom are going up, they're not going up very briskly, but the productivity has been rising at a healthy clip. So a healthy clip such that workers should be getting much more. And I agree with that. You know, workers, even the low-wage workers, they're working and producing more and more, and they're working more and more diligently. But the money that they're creating by their work is just going to the top, going to the corporate management. It's going to the elite, who then use it so that they can send their children to Harvard and Yale and Princeton, and give their children the best preparatory services to prepare for the SAT, right? You know, because little Johnny needs to get a 2250 or 2300 on the SAT so he can go off to Harvard or Yale. So he takes these, you know, special prep classes over the summer. You know, meanwhile, people like me, I didn't take any kind of prep class for the SAT. I didn't score 2300, but I scored pretty high. Anyway, on page 203 and 204, basically Barbara asks a question. And the question is this: so why don't employees behave in a rational fashion, demanding higher wages from their employers or seeking out better paying jobs? Well, and Barbara gives a few answers for this. And she says that low-wage employees don't seek better jobs because of the following four things: child care issues, hassles of drug testing, transportation limitations, and time limitations, right? The hassle of drug testing is it takes time to take a drug testing. You know, you have to get yourself to the place where the test is going to be administered. Transportation limits, of course, there's the distance of perhaps trying to find a new job if you don't have a car, and all those kind of problems. And of course, you have time limitations. It takes time to search for a new job. You don't have that time when you're already working one or two jobs. And of course, you might also have children that you have to find a babysitter for because you can't take your children to get drug tested with you very easily. So all these problems exist. And on page 206, Barbara makes probably one of her most profound statements in this entire book. And I quote it very slowly for you so that you can really have it sink into your mind. Barbara writes, "We confess everything in our society: sex, crime, illness. But no one wants to reveal what they earn or how they got it. The money taboo is the one thing that employers can always count on." Right? And she's saying this based on employees not being able to find out how much one another are making and how much their employers are making, all that kind of stuff, right? Now, I would argue that today we don't confess everything in our society. I don't think people confess to certain crimes they'll commit. They won't necessarily confess to certain illnesses they have, and they definitely don't want to talk about drug use, right? I mean, I've tried to get people to talk to me even in confidence about their drug use, and I usually have not been very successful, even though I'm a very confidential person. And people should know that. At least people who know me well at all will know that. But yeah, money is a big issue. People don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about how much they're making. Sometimes they maybe feel embarrassed about how much they're making, so they don't want to bring it up. Even if they brought it up, maybe we could get angry about it, the fact that so many people are making so little, and demand a greater income. And if we demand a greater income for low-wage workers, maybe that would give motivation for schools to actually teach their children more, because the way it works now, as George Carlin puts it, you know, the education system sucks because that's what the corporations want. They want people just smart enough to run the machines, but not smart enough to ask questions, not smart enough to demand higher wages and higher salaries, and that's how the corporate capitalists function, and I readily agree with George Carlin. But on page 207, Barbara Ehrenreich notes that the National Labor Relations Act of 1935 makes it illegal to punish people for revealing their wages to one another, but the practice is likely to persist until rooted out by lawsuits company by company. So, you know, sometimes you get in trouble by these companies if you do talk with other employees about your wages, right? So, you know, you're not supposed to be, if you're a little proletarian, you're not supposed to talk about how much you're getting economically effed. And then page 209, Barbara notes that drug testing is another routine indignity for low-wage workers. Civil libertarians see it as a violation of our Fourth Amendment, freedom from unreasonable search. Most job holders and applicants find it simply embarrassing. Right? It is embarrassing. Barbara notes again on page 209 that rules against gossip or even talking make it hard to air your grievances to peers, or should you be so daring, to enlist other workers in a group effort to bring about change through a union-organized drive, for example. On page 210, Barbara notes that Walmart employees who have bucked the company by getting involved in a unionization drive or by suing the company for failing to pay overtime have been fired for breaking the company's rules against using profanity. And he cites Bob Orgetta's in Sam We Trust, page 356. Former Walmart workers file overtime suit in Harrison County, Charleston Gazette, January 24th, 1999. Barbara notes, and these are some other key quotes, so if low-wage workers do not always behave in economically rational ways, that is, as free agents within the capitalist democracy, it is because they dwell in a place that is neither free nor in any way democratic. If you are treated as an untrustworthy person, a potential slacker, drug addict, or thief, you may begin to feel less trustworthy yourself. If you are constantly reminded of your lowly position in the social hierarchy, whether by individual managers or by a plethora of impersonal rules, you begin to accept that unfortunate status. All right, and then she notes that on page 211. We depend for our self-image on the humans immediately around us, to the point of altering our perceptions of the world so as to fit with theirs. My guess is that the indignities imposed on so many low-wage workers, the drug tests, the constant surveillance, being reamed out by managers, are part of what keeps wages low. If you're made to feel unworthy enough, you may come to think that you're being paid what you are actually worth. And that is so sad, but I think that is true, and I think Barbara is right. And on page 212, Barbara believes that workers can perform their job well without management constantly interfering with or controlling their every move. And then as one of the, well, let me actually make this in a second video. Let's do a second video on evaluation, where we can talk about the certain questions like, what does Barbara find problematic about where Americans place its priorities? And maybe a question like, how does the author believe a two-class system is being created in America? And what myth about poor people and jobs does the author attempt to debunk? Thank you for watching. I hope this video was informative, and I hope you will watch some of my other videos. Thank you.